My wife came home one evening, found me sitting on the couch watching TV, and asked why I couldn't be more like her friend's husband, the kind of man who cooked, cleaned, and helped with everything around the house. She wasn't trying to start a fight. She was tired and just venting. But later that night, I asked her a question she wasn't expecting. The front door opened a little after 6. "I'm home." "Hey!" Laura carried 2 grocery bags into the kitchen. She had spent most of the afternoon at her mother's house, then stopped for groceries on the way home. Michael was on the couch watching television. He looked over. "Hey, what's for dinner? I'm starving." Laura stopped. "How long have you been home?" "About an hour." "And it never occurred to you to make something?" Michael lowered the volume. "I didn't know when you were coming." "There is food in the refrigerator." He looked at her. Laura began unpacking the groceries. "You know men cook now, right?" Michael smiled. "They do?" "Yes. They even clean houses." "Interesting." "I'm serious, Michael. I've been out all afternoon. I come home tired and you're sitting there watching TV asking me what's for dinner." Michael stood. "Okay, let me help." No, go watch your show. I'll make something quick." "You just said—" "I was venting. Go." Michael stared at her. "I'm getting very mixed instructions here." Laura smiled. "Go away." He started back toward the couch. "Melissa was telling me yesterday how much Jason helps her. He cooks, does laundry, cleans." "Good for Jason." "She says they share almost everything." Michael nodded. "I already dislike Jason." Laura laughed. Their 14-year-old daughter Sophie appeared on the stairs. "What's going on?" "Your mother has found a better husband." "Melissa's husband?" Michael turned. "You know about Jason too?" "Mrs. Parker talks about him all the time." Michael pointed toward Laura. "See? No normal husband gets this much publicity." Sophie walked into the kitchen and stole a piece of cucumber. "Why didn't you cook, Dad?" Michael stared at her. "Whose side are you on?" "Whoever's making dinner." Laura laughed. "Exactly." Michael got up again. "All right, I'm helping." Laura handed him 3 plates. "Set the table." "I can do more than that." "Then set it extremely well." After dinner, Sophie went upstairs to finish her homework. Michael loaded the dishwasher while Laura cleaned the counter. She watched him for a moment. "Jason would be proud." "Jason needs to stay out of my marriage." Laura laughed. Later, she brought 2 cups of tea into the living room and sat beside Michael. A few minutes passed before he spoke. "Do you really think I don't help you enough?" Laura turned. "You're still thinking about that?" "Just asking." She leaned against his shoulder. "I was tired, but yes, you could help a little more." Michael nodded. "Fair. You do plenty of other things. Anything breaks, you fix it. Cars, plumbing, yard, anything I can't handle, you take care of it. But cooking, laundry, cleaning, most of that became mine." "Yeah." Laura looked up at him. "I thought you'd argue." "You're right. What am I supposed to argue about?" He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe it's how I grew up." "Your parents?" Michael nodded. "My mother did everything inside the house. I don't remember Dad ever cooking or doing laundry." "Sounds familiar." "Very funny." "But Dad worked like a machine. Farm, cattle, barn, fences. He'd be outside before sunrise. Mom ran the house. Dad handled everything else. Nobody discussed it. That's just how their marriage worked." "And you grew up thinking that's normal?" "I guess some of it stuck." Laura smiled. "Then I'll blame your father." "You liked my father." "Fine, I'll blame you." Michael laughed. Then Laura said, "But you weren't always like this." "What do you mean?" "You helped more when we first got married. You cooked, you vacuumed, you even did laundry." "I did?" "You did." Michael frowned dramatically. "What happened to that man?" "You got old." I'm 43. Exactly. He nudged her and she laughed. For a few seconds they watched television. Then Michael put his cup down. Do you think my life has been easy? Laura turned toward him. What? Not now, all these years. No, of course not. You worked hard. You built the business. You take care of us. Michael nodded. Do you remember when we got married? Of course. I didn't even have a stable job. We didn't have much. Michael looked at her. How little do you remember us having? Laura frowned. What do you mean? He smiled faintly. Nothing. Michael. He leaned back against the couch. I'm just thinking. Maybe after the first few years, you never really had to wonder whether we'd have enough. I think about money. I don't mean paying bills. We both do that now. I mean wondering if there would actually be enough money to pay them. Laura lowered her cup. Michael continued. There were times you'd tell me we needed something for the house, something for Sophie, and I'd say okay. Yes. Sometimes I had no idea where that money was going to come from. Laura stared at him. Then why didn't you tell me? Michael gave a small shrug. I suppose that's another thing I learned from my father. Laura reached for the remote and muted the television. What do you mean? Michael looked at her. My mother carried her responsibilities. My father carried his. He paused. I just don't remember my father ever talking about what his were costing him. Laura kept looking at him. And you think you did the same thing? Michael smiled. I think I understand him better now. He picked up his tea. When we got married, money was tight. Really tight. You knew that. I did. But you didn't know everything. Laura waited. Remember that old washing machine? The one that flooded the kitchen? Twice. You refused to replace it the first time. Because I couldn't. Laura looked at him. Michael continued. The second time you said, Michael, we need a washing machine. And you were right. We had Sophie by then. We couldn't keep dealing with that thing. I remember. I said we'd get one that weekend. Yes. I had about $180 left after the bills. Laura's expression changed. The washing machine cost more than that. Much more. Then how did you buy it? I took 2 extra jobs that week, one Saturday, one Sunday, borrowed the rest from my brother and paid him back the next month. You told me you were helping someone from work that weekend. I was. For money? Michael nodded. Laura stared at him. Why didn't you just tell me we needed to wait? Because we needed a washing machine. We could have waited. With a baby and a machine pouring water onto the floor? Laura shook her head. You still should have told me. Michael smiled. Okay, I should have told you. She leaned back against the couch. What else? What do you mean? You said I didn't know everything. What else didn't I know? Michael laughed softly. Laura, that was 15 years ago. There were 100 little things. Tell me. He thought for a moment. Remember when the guys used to go out on Friday nights? Yes. You used to tell me to go with them. And you always said you'd rather come home. I did. Laura narrowed her eyes. You hated going out with them? No, I liked it. Then why didn't you go? Michael smiled. Because they could spend $80 at a bar without thinking about it. I couldn't. Laura said nothing. I could spend $12 on ice cream, though. She looked at him. Michael smiled. I'd come home with that chocolate ice cream you liked and those little strawberry cups Sophie used to eat. Laura's mouth opened slightly. You told me you preferred coming home to us. I did prefer it. But you also couldn't afford the bar. Both things can be true. Laura looked down for a moment. You made it sound like it was your choice. It was my choice. Michael, he laughed. I'm serious. What was I missing? 2 hours listening to drunk men complain about their jobs? She gave him a small smile. Still. Laura, I'm not telling you I suffered every Friday night. I came home to my wife and daughter with ice cream. I was happy. She reached over and took his hand. Michael squeezed it once. There were harder days. Laura looked at him. Like what? He was quiet for a few seconds. Your mother's operation. Her smile disappeared. What about Mom's operation? You remember when it happened? Of course. It had been 9 years earlier, around the same time Michael had started his business. Laura's mother had needed surgery. Insurance covered much of it, but not everything. Her parents had already been struggling financially. Laura looked at Michael. I asked if we could help them. You did. And you said yes. Michael nodded. You said not to worry about it. Yeah. Laura watched him. Michael, did we not have the money? He smiled faintly. No. How much did we have? Not enough. But you had just started the business. Exactly. Then where did you get it? Michael rubbed his chin. Everywhere. What does that mean? I delayed buying some equipment, took every service call I could get, used a credit card for part of it, moved a few things around. You never said a word. What was I supposed to say? Your mother needed the operation. My parents could have figured something out. And they did. We only helped with part of it. But we couldn't afford even that part. Michael gave a small shrug. We managed. Laura stared at him. Is that why you were working every weekend then? Partly. I thought it was because the business was new. It was that too. Her eyes began to fill. Michael immediately leaned closer. Hey. He wiped the tear that slipped down her cheek. Don't do that. How can you say that? Because I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I should have known. Why? Because I'm your wife. Michael smiled. And I was your husband. What does that mean? It means when you came to me and said your mother needed help, I wanted to help. But you were carrying all of that alone. I wasn't carrying everything alone. You were taking care of Sophie, the house, working too. We were both doing things. Laura wiped beneath her eye. But I wasn't lying awake wondering where the money was coming from. Michael smiled. Neither was I sometimes. I was too tired. Laura laughed through the remaining tears and hit his arm lightly. Idiot. That's better. She leaned against him again. For a while, neither spoke. Then Michael said, You know the funny thing? What? I don't remember those years as miserable. Laura lifted her head. No? No. We were broke, but we were happy. She smiled. We were. I liked coming home. You and Sophie would be here. She'd run to the door when she heard my key. She used to scream, Daddy, so loudly the neighbors probably knew you were home. Michael laughed. Exactly. So don't turn it into some tragedy now. Laura nodded. Okay. Michael looked toward the television. But I suppose something happened along the way. What? The difficult part ended. Laura waited. The business started doing well. We stopped worrying about every bill. We bought this house. You went back to work properly. Things got easier. He looked around the room. But I kept doing what I'd always done. Laura smiled. Sitting on the couch? That too. She laughed. Michael continued. I think I got used to believing my job was to work, make sure everyone had what they needed, handle the big problems, and then come home and relax. While I kept cooking and cleaning. Yeah. At least you're admitting it. I admitted it an hour ago. I just enjoy hearing it. Michael shook his head. Laura rested her head against his shoulder again. After a moment, she said, But there's one thing I still don't understand. What? Why hide it from me? I wasn't hiding it. You were taking extra jobs, borrowing money, worrying about bills, helping my parents when we couldn't afford it. What do you call that? Michael considered the question. Then he nodded. Okay, maybe I was. Why? He looked at her. I thought that was my responsibility. Because you're the husband? Probably. Laura sighed. That old farm again. Michael smiled. That old farm. She squeezed his hand. You know you're allowed to evolve, right? I bought a dishwasher. Very progressive. He laughed. Then Michael picked up his cup and looked at her. Have you ever heard the story of the Sword of Damocles? Laura frowned. The what? The Sword of Damocles. No? Michael smiled. Okay, then maybe I can explain it better. Michael smiled. It's an old story. There was a king named Dionysius. Powerful, wealthy, lived in luxury. Damocles was one of the men around him, and he kept talking about how fortunate the king was. All that wealth, all that power. So the king decided to let Damocles experience it. He gave him his seat, food, servants, everything he could want. Sounds nice. It was, until Damocles looked up. Laura waited. There was a sword hanging right above his head by a single horsehair. Her eyebrows rose. A horsehair? Just one. The king wanted him to understand that the throne might look comfortable from the outside, but the person sitting on it lived with a sword above his head. Laura nodded slowly. Michael continued. That's the point. Sometimes you look at somebody's position and see the good part. You don't see what's hanging over them. Laura took his hand. I would have understood, Michael. I could have adjusted. We could have waited for things. You were already doing your part. That's not what I mean. I know. She squeezed his hand. You didn't have to sit under that sword by yourself. Michael looked down at their hands. I suppose not. And don't do it again. If you're worried, tell me. If the business has a problem, tell me. Don't sit alone under whoever's sword it is. I'm with you. She leaned over and gently kissed his cheek. It's Damocles' sword, Mom, not whoever's sword. They both turned. Sophie was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame. Laura stared at her. How long have you been standing there? Long enough to hear the story. Michael laughed. Sophie walked over and hugged them both. Michael wrapped an arm around Laura and pulled Sophie closer. Deal. The next morning, Laura came downstairs to the smell of something burning. She walked into the kitchen and stopped. Michael was standing at the stove with a spatula in one hand. Smoke was rising from a pan. What are you doing? He looked over. Breakfast. Laura walked closer and looked into the pan. Michael, what is that? Eggs. Those are eggs? I may have left them alone for a minute. Sophie appeared in the doorway, still half asleep. What's burning? Your father is cooking. Sophie looked at the pan. Why? Michael turned toward her. Because apparently I'm supposed to help around the house. Laura took the spatula from his hand and switched off the burner. Michael frowned. I can fix it. Laura looked at the blackened eggs, then at him. Honey, I love you. Now go back to your fat couch, watch your TV, and let me handle this before you burn the house down. Michael stared at her. My fat couch? Sophie burst out laughing. Laura pushed him gently toward the living room. Go. Michael shook his head as he walked away. 24 hours ago I was being criticized for not helping. Laura opened a window. And now I'm criticizing the quality of your help. Michael dropped onto the couch. I can't win in this house. Sophie sat at the table, still laughing. Laura cracked fresh eggs into the pan. From the living room, Michael called, For the record, I tried. Laura smiled. And we appreciate your sacrifice. Michael picked up the remote. Finally, some respect. If you enjoy stories about marriage, family, and the things we sometimes fail to see in the people closest to us, subscribe to Forge Stories. And tell me in the comments, what's one thing your partner does that you think often goes unnoticed?